Alright, so fellow nerds, rejoice. For as long as I can remember, gaming handhelds were a huge part of my childhood with the Nintendo DS, the PSP, PlayStation Vita, bringing me immense amounts of joy on long car rides to go visit family or on plane trips and things like that. And here I have a smorgasbord of like the best overall handhelds that you can get on the market today with the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. This thing is a beast. The brand new Nintendo Switch 2. Ironically, it seems like the battery's dead. We'll definitely talk about that later, but overall loving the Switch 2 a lot. The Asus ROG Ally X, the Steamdeck, which is like the golden child for a lot of people in terms of handhelds. Not my personal golden child, but definitely an amazing device in a ton of different ways. And also the Lenovo Legion Go S. This one just came out pretty recently. And because I love all of these so much, what I'm going to do for you guys in as concise a manner as possible to respect you guys' time, what the pros and cons are of each, what each one excels at over the other ones, and ultimately recommend to you guys which one may be the best fit for you based on your different preferences, your wants out of a handheld device, of course. And I've loved using every single one of these for different reasons, so I'm really excited to break down this video for you guys. So if you guys are new here, my name is Dave, and this is where tech meets lifestyle. Alright, so as it pertains to the actual displays that you're getting here on all of these devices, what I can say is that in general, you're getting a really nice viewing experience out of all of these. Now, every display on my desk right now is an LCD display, with the lone standout being the Steam Deck with an OLED display. The OLED display here looks absolutely amazing. The contrast you're getting and the darkness and the shadows is excellent. But there are a few trade-offs that you're getting here, right? Of all of the handhelds in this video, this is going to have the lowest refresh rate, the lowest resolution display, and it is also going to lack VRR or variable refresh rate, which essentially in layman's terms, for those of you who don't know, it basically just makes the viewing experience when you're playing your games smoother in super basic terms. And so for me personally, even though the OLED panel on this is amazing, in terms of the overall screen package, this is the one that I would tend to lean toward the least. So even the ROG Ally X here, right? This is a 7-inch display. I've been super spoiled, and over time, I definitely prefer all of the larger displays on this desk as a whole. But even this 7-inch display, it is a 1080p 120Hz display with VRR as well. And even here on the new Nintendo Switch 2, you're also getting a 1080p 120Hz display with VRR. For those of you wondering, well, why are all these screens more capable in every way and don't just slap on OLED? In very simple terms, it would make these other 4 devices exceedingly expensive. But for me personally, in terms of overall screen package, definitely looking at the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus and the Legion Go S for having the highest resolution displays at 1200p, having large, beautiful 8-inch displays, and also packing the 120Hz refresh rate as well as VRR. Definitely the Claw and the Legion Go is like 1A, 1B. And then the Switch 2, even though this is like a slower display, there's some ghosting artifacts. But in terms of overall screen experience, the one that for me takes the cake every single day is definitely going to be the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus and the Legion Go S. Now, something I really like as well are these touchpads here. The Steam Deck is the only one that has these touchpads. This is not going to be a make or break feature for a lot of people, but they are really nice. They just feel great. They have great haptics. If this were included on more handhelds, I think that would be a really cool plus. All right, so for those of you who do not know, I have my license as a clinical therapist, which is going to matter more in a few seconds, right? So what's great about all these handhelds is that you can connect them to your monitor, so you can take your games from the small screen to the big screen, which is really darn cool. But only 2 of these devices can actually work as dedicated desktops as well. So those being the MSI Claw 8 and the Asus ROG Ally X, hooked up to the monitor via a Thunderbolt 4 cable, so you can hook up your keyboard, your mouse to this, and this is going to work just like a desktop. I just have it connected like this just for the sake of you guys seeing this. I can open up my different tabs for the internet. This is really freaking cool. And so the reason that I brought up myself being a therapist is that the client software that my job uses is web-based. And so what that means is that at a moment's notice, I can be playing, say, Forza Horizon 5 on this, but then if I really need to, if I don't have my MacBook or my ZenBook 814 on me, hook it up to a monitor and get done my clinical work that I need to get done. But it's not just a gaming handheld. It is quite literally a Windows PC. All right, so I think one of the first big important things to discuss when we're talking about any of these handhelds is the overall user interface software experience that you're getting out of all of these. And what I can say is that, for example, the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus, I love this thing as a cohesive whole package. This thing is an absolute beast. Being able to play Expedition 33 at really good frame rates at 1200p with good graphical settings, this thing is awesome. But software-wise, it leaves a lot to be desired. And honestly, even though this one costs the most out of the entire haul that I have here in this video for you guys, this one software-wise definitely lacks the most. The MSI Claw software, doesn't look great, it doesn't always run super well, sometimes it can be unresponsive when actually pressing. Watch, ready? This is going to open up the MSI menu. That's supposed to open a menu, and it might do it, but it might not do it. I'm gonna press it again. And again. There you go, boom, it finally opened up after, I think, 4 clicks. And that kind of gives you an idea of like the MSI software experience. That can be a little bit slow to open. This one over here that opens up like your control center, that opens up a little bit more responsively than sort of like the MSI home software. But as a whole, it's definitely the least nice. But out of the bunch, if you want the most console-like experience out of these handhelds, it definitely would be the Nintendo Switch 2 because it is marketed more as like a straightforward, clean, streamlined handheld for sure. But then also SteamOS on the Legion Go OS and the Steamdeck OLED as well. Those are really nice, refined, clean, polished software that works every single time you're trying to do anything in there and get you exactly what you need. And for me personally, I like those a little bit more just because there is a bit more control you have over the actual output and performance of the handheld console itself than on something, say, like the Nintendo Switch 2, which is basically just running the way it's going to run when it opens a game, and that's it, period. But that's definitely a preference thing. And then the LAX would be number 3. But then, unfortunately, the MSI Claw, I love this thing a ton, but overall software-wise and ease to actually just pick up and play, this one's gonna come last. Now, as a gamer, I know just how easy it is to get sucked into games and to isolate. And as a therapist, I know firsthand how important it is to have someone to hear you, to bounce your thoughts and ideas off of, and ultimately to help you process your traumas and your stressors. But unfortunately, finding a therapist that actually is the right fit for you can be hard. Thankfully, today's sponsor, BetterHelp, is a platform that offers you a curated selection of tools to help you find a therapist that best suits your needs. They have a questionnaire that will ask you your history, experiences, your preferences, and align you with a roster of therapists that are likely to be a good fit for you. And a huge benefit of BetterHelp is the convenience it provides you, as you're able to communicate with your therapist at the times and places that are most convenient for you. Via phone call, video chat, text message, from the comfort of your home, your car, at a park. It's really up to you. So if you're finding yourself on hard times and looking for some better help, visit betterhelp.com/DavidAVelez or click in the links in my description down below for 10% off of your first month. I'll have links in the description down below for you guys. And something else too that I think a lot of you guys will appreciate that the Legion Go S has that none of the other handhelds have is that it has these little switches here that turn your triggers from just like your normal triggers to when you flip them up, it turns them into more like hair triggers. It just makes the triggers more responsive to your actual touch. I think this is a really awesome feature that I would really love to see in more handheld devices. It's honestly really great, and you're just flat out not getting this on any of the other handhelds. And in terms of overall speaker experience, the original Legion Go, those speakers flat out just were not really good at all. The best way I can describe it is that when you were playing games, it felt like the sound was coming out of like a small tinny cardboard box or something. It really just was not great. Or for example, the LAX, when I'm in a game like say Expedition 33, when I'm playing this game, I feel like the orchestra is a part of the actual experience. When I'm parrying, when I'm doing special moves or gradient attacks, everything sounds and feels amazing in the hand. And unfortunately, the Legion Go West speakers, although they do sound better than the original Legion Go, they're still not the best of the bunch, I would say. And I would say that like the Steamdeck OLED does have better speakers in my experience. And the Switch 2 speakers, although they don't get as loud as say like the LAX, they're very high quality speakers. And so as a whole, in terms of like worst to best, it'll be Legion Go S at the bottom, and then a pretty healthy gap. And then you have like the Steam Deck and the Switch 2 kind of like combined, because they are very good speakers. They do a good job of adding to the overall gaming experience in my usage. And then at the top would be the LAX, because the speakers here are amazing. And honestly, after doing some extensive gaming on the MSI Claw, the speakers on the MSI Claw are like really freaking good and a bit better than the LAX in my experience. Not because the LAX speakers stink, they're still like great and up here, but the MSI Claw speakers are like, they did their thing, I have to say. When it comes to the actual ergonomics of each of these devices, what I can say, easily, by far, hands down, not even close. When you pick up a Nintendo Switch 2 compared to these other ones, just hands down the lightest and slimmest feeling in the hands, and it feels great playing things in handheld mode. feel awesome. The one on the opposite end of that spectrum is going to be the Legion Go S. That is a very thick boy. What I can say is that they did a really good job in terms of the way that the actual console curves into your hands. Even though in the hand you could tell this is a girthier handheld than the other ones, the way that your hands actually curve into the body of the handheld itself, I think they did a really good job with. But I could definitely easily see this for, like, say, your common person being a more cumbersome handheld experience than the other ones, especially when you're considering your travel cases and things like that. The Ally X, I think, feels solid in the hand. The MSI Claw feels really good in the hand as well. They have like hand grip curvature to them, but they're not as pronounced as, say, like the Steamdeck OLED, which for me personally, I would say is at the top of the list in terms of just pure in-hand feel, the way that the grips actually curve into your hand. I think for most people, it would probably go like Steam Deck, Nintendo Switch, and then some combination of like the Ally and the MSI Claw, and the Legion Go S somewhere like as a close third to the number 2 spot. When it comes to the joysticks, out of these handhelds, only 2 of them are actually coming with Hall effect joysticks, and that being the MSI Claw and the Legion Go S. And for those of you in very layman's terms that don't know what Hall effect joysticks are, essentially the biggest reason that they're coveted is durability, where on controllers where they're not Hall effect joysticks, you can get what's called stick drift, where essentially the sensor reads that your stick is pointing in a direction that it's not, which you can understand would be very annoying for actual gameplay where you're just standing still and your camera just starts to slowly teeter off into space. Or if you are trying to aim at something precisely, it's hard to align your aim because your controller is also reading that the stick is kind of like drifting off to the side, and that's messing up your aim as well. And so on the Legion Go S and the MSI Claw, you're getting the higher quality joystick that's going to last you longer. All right, so a really cool feature of all of these, except for one, is that you have these additional back button inputs on the backside here. So you can see these buttons right here on the Legion Go S, these here on the Ally X, on the back here of the MSI Claw, and then of course here on the back of the Steamdeck OLED, which actually is 4, so more than all of the other handhelds. But you're not getting that on the Nintendo Switch 2. There are no additional buttons here on the back end. For a lot of people, that's not going to be a deal breaker, but for those of you who don't understand why those are relevant at all, but these back buttons are really nice because you can essentially customize them to become any other buttons that you want for your handheld device, right? So for example, right, on Cyberpunk 2077, something I have set on all of these is that when I zoom in with, say, like my sniper to aim, I then press one of the back buttons here to activate my gyroscope. I can then better line up my shot and then shoot, and then I'll toggle it off for when I'm just running around, driving around the city, because I don't want to use gyroscope all of the time. I personally only really like it for when I'm aiming. And what's nice is that you're getting that on all of these devices. The Steam Deck has 4 buttons, so innately it's going to go at the top because it has just more options for customization. Then the close second would be the Ally, the MSI Claw, the Legion Go S, and then at the bottom of that, the Switch 2, because it doesn't have that option. But to be fair and sort of balance the scale, something that the Switch 2 has that those don't is detachable controllers. And then of course, depending on the game that you're playing, you can set it up on the table like so, use it like a mouse, and that's something that you can do on the Switch that you can't do on any of the other handhelds. Okay. All right, so this video is honestly going a little bit longer than I initially intended it to. There's a lot more involved in this than I initially planned in the very beginning. But I think one of the last big things that's really going to matter for a lot of you guys, or maybe not really matter that much at all, is the performance and battery life. So battery life, very succinctly, if you want to play, say, indie games or less graphically demanding games, the Steam Deck OLED is amazingly optimized. And that's still going to get you the best battery life in general, and playing at those 15 and 6 watt TDP levels, which essentially is the muscle and horsepower that the handheld is outputting to play those games. It'll be the Steam Deck, and then the Ally X and the MSI Claw, and then it'll be the Legion Go S, and then the Switch 2. And while all of the other handhelds have either an 80 watt hour or 55.5 watt hour battery, the Switch 2 is basically operating with, like, I think it was something like a 19 watt hour battery. So flat out battery life is just not going to be the best. But when it comes to actual power and graphical output, it's definitely the MSI Claw with that Intel chip, then the Ally X and the Legion Go S with the Z1 Extreme chip, or you can get the Z2 Go version, which is going to be a little bit stronger than the Steam Deck OLED. I did a video about that. It'll be right up on one of these top corners for you guys. But what's amazing is that even though the Switch 2 is not the strongest of these handhelds, it's the only one that when docked in can support 4K gaming on a game like, say, Cyberpunk 2077. These other ones can do that, but not with great frame rates, and it's not going to be a super smooth experience unless you have them hooked up to an external GPU. And so the Switch 2 definitely wins in that regard for, like, raw graphical output in docked mode. Now, naturally, there's probably a couple of things that I'm missing. If there's anything here that you have an explicit question about, please let me know in the comment section down below. I'll get to as many of you guys as I possibly can. But I hope you enjoyed this video as a whole. I hope it could be helpful for you. And as always, thank you for stopping by, hanging out. Subscribe if you want to see more tech reviews here on the channel with me. And as always, have a fantastic remainder of your day, and peace, love, adios, bye guys, and have a great day.